Welcome to the Hardcore MBA podcast with your host, Erlend, Bakke.
Hello and welcome to the first video Hardcore MBA episode. And for that, I have invited a very special guest here today, who is Payne. So the thing is, when I have a question or if I'm wondering about something, I invite a true expert on a subject that not only it has been in the field and pretends to have knowledge, but actually has decades of understanding and knowledge. Now, Payne has worked with many of the most famous people in the world in the information marketing space. He's done multi-million-dollar launches, and he is, one of those people that you can say is a heavyweight in the industry. So if you've heard of Michael Gerber, Paul McKenna, and the list goes on and on and on. Paul McGee, we've got in here. We've got Leslie Kenton. He's done TED conferences in Abu Dhabi. Gotten hundreds of people's. Did you have 100 people in that room? Hundreds and hundreds of people.
850 people. I got to a conference in Abu Dhabi. Yeah.
Jay Abraham. So basically, what I'm doing right now is I'm sitting here with his one of his many books. Are You Next? And in here, basically in the front, there's just pages and pages of famous people like Jay Abraham right there endorsing Chris's work. And you've had a really interesting career in information marketing products, and it's a lot of people think of it as like this new thing. Like a lot of these millionaire seminars talk about, oh yeah, all you have to do is write a book. Boom, you're an expert, now you're going to make millions. How did you get started in the space? About 20 years ago?
Yeah, we're going back to the early 1990s, Erlend. I was working for a software publisher and magazine publisher, and I was running their software side. And then there was some machinations in the boardroom. And I went on holiday with my girlfriend for 2 weeks with a brand new car that the board had bought me, a really posh sports car. And came back from holiday, went to France, and I was released from the business. So suddenly...
Released as in?
Asked to leave.
Oh.
And the board decided that they wanted to run the business in a different way. Fair enough. So I then had to think of something else to do. And they said, we will pay you full salary for 3 years, provided you don't do anything competitive to us. Does that make sense? So I thought, well, what could I do? But I had seen these electronic devices in America called light and sound devices, mind machines. And these consisted of like sunglasses and headphones with a small box like an iPod. And these devices use pulse light and sound to get you into a very relaxed, altered state, as it were. So I thought I'd set up a business selling that kind of thing and importing personal growth products from America. So that's what I did and started buying in 1 or 2 units and built up from there. So it literally started from my small back bedroom. I built up a business which became the second largest supplier of personal growth products in the UK.
So when you were starting out there, how did you find the product? How did you know it was going to be a winner? Can you tell us? Because a lot of people are sitting out there, they have the same ambitions, but they're not sure about where to start. Can you tell us a little bit more about that process?
Yes, well, it was really sharing what I love. It was sharing my passion. And I was very into personal growth material. It was what I spent my money on. So I had this idea, it would be called Tools for Life or something. And then a mate of mine said, why don't you call it Life Tools? And there was a similar-ish business in the States called Tools for Exploration, which was selling consciousness-changing products. So that idea of the word tools worked. So I called it Life Tools. And I came across, I was interested in speed reading. Could I read faster? And I came across a seminar called Photo Reading. And so I went to the seminar in London, very scared because it was about learning how to read at 25,000 words a minute. And the American inventor Paul Sheely was there. And Paul McKenna was there, who people in the States may not know him too much. He wrote a book called I Can Make You Thin and other stuff like that. And Paul was there and he was learning photo readings. That was the first time Paul and I got together and then became friends after that. And there was no audio product at the time. There was just a seminar. But I really got what photo reading was on that seminar. So when I spoke to the guy who was running the seminar, he said, well, we're going to produce an audio product soon. I said, well, I'd like to sell it for you in America, in the UK. So he said, great. So when it was available, I actually wrote a letter, which was a long form sales letter to my customers. And I sold more in the first 2 years in the UK of photo reading than the Americans did in a market that's, 5 times the size. I'm more used to direct mail and buying stuff through the mail.
Wow. So you went to a seminar, you saw an opportunity, you were proactive, you took action, you added massive value to them. Did they actually end up using the sales letter and everything in the US as well, or would it only work in the UK?
Well, generally, when I got a product from the States, and that whatever product might be, for example, I promoted, is it funny, Born Rich, Bob Proctor. So people like the Bob Proctors of this world. There's meditation courses, things like the Centerpoint Research, Awakening Prologue meditation course. All these courses that I used to bring into the UK and sell, I generally rewrote from scratch because they had so many Americanisms and the testimonials were British. So I would find people in the UK who would try the product out and get their testimonial, and that would go in the sales letter. And also it was my enthusiasm because people were buying me. People buy from people. And so people, when they bought from me, knew that this was my enthusiasm. So when I said, this is the next thing that I'm really into, they almost like rang me up and said, oh, you've got me again, Chris. I wasn't going to spend any money, but now I'm going to spend. So
yeah, sorry.
No, but what was interesting, where I was different was, and I think this is really important, when I launched, I didn't know what my business was going to be. I decided I would do a 4-page catalog. So imagine an A4 piece of paper. In America, it's B4. And it's 2 of those stuck together. Now, in the UK, that's called A3. So it's a 4-page black and white. And it was saying tools to change your life. And there were books and CDs, as it were, and little devices. But when we launched that to a couple of thousand, it was an insert in a particular newsletter. I looked at it and said, where are we making the money? And one product was where like 70% of the profit was coming from. And that was these light and sound devices. So I was able to analyze where our money was being made and said, well, we won't sell many of the other things that we were promoting. We'll focus on that one thing. So I then put adverts in a New Age magazine selling these relaxation devices. So I'd invest £100, like $100, and I'd make 2,000 back over time. So I think that's a good return on investment, 20 times. And then I could have done the advert, the next issue, the same size, but I didn't. I decided to double the size of the advert. And then when that worked, I doubled the advert again. And so I went from a tiny display ad to full page, full color, and then moved to multiple pages because it was about return on investment, because I knew that if I spent X amount of money, I was going to make a multiple of that. And as long as I had the cash flow, that's all that mattered. Now, when I launched my business, there were 2 other companies that were selling similar devices. But over the months, their adverts never changed in size.
Right. Why didn't they do that?
They don't think that way. It never occurs to some people that if you spend £100 and make £1,000 in profit, it never occurs to people to spend £200 to make 2,000.
Do you reckon these were employees that didn't really have an upside in understanding that? I think that's one of the challenges, is like really Because I have 40 staff, and sometimes the challenge is in understanding that if you understand that spending $5,000 and getting these 4 pages will basically give you the same amount of return, so basically 20, 30 times that investment, it makes sense. But because they don't have an incentive to do it, their incentive is to go to work, make their boss happy and then go home again. But they don't understand that making the boss happy is actually increasing turnover, increasing profits, improving the core of the business like that. Were these people, were they entrepreneurs making those decisions, or just employees?
They were, but the thing is, what a lot of people, even in the information online business, they don't understand that business is numbers. You need to run a business on a spreadsheet. And people say, well, I'm running this business and this is where we're making money. Well, unless the numbers say that, it's probably not true, because the mind generalizes. And just because you are selling 3 times as much of a product as another product doesn't mean you're making more money there, because the margin could be less. And it might seem as if you've got the rough idea in your head where the profit is. But unless you actually put the cost of sales into a spreadsheet and the actual numbers in, you don't really get a true figure. I mean, when I was running a software publishing business before I set up Live Tools, I was not the managing director. Well, actually, I was the MD at the time, but there was a chairman who was an accountant. He was trained over several years how to look at numbers. And I said, look, this is where we're making the money. And we should be putting more of our promotional money into that line of products and the others. And he said, you are completely wrong, Chris. And because he saw that we're selling tens of thousands of one product, and this product was only selling low thousands. But the margin was so much higher because of the pricing structure was different. But he couldn't see that. And almost he was very reluctant to look at my figures. So, and people don't think that way. You've got to analyze the numbers at a deep level and then do more of what works and less of what doesn't. Quite simple, really.
So you said this guy actually was trained in numbers, but wasn't able to see what numbers to look at.
Lao Tzu, the great Chinese philosopher, said the wise are not learned and the learned are not wise. So he was very learned, but he wasn't wise. And there are some people that aren't academically bright. They failed all their exams at school, but my God, they know how to make money in business. Because they think in a different way. And that's what it's about. I mean, when I were at I was putting adverts in newspapers. So if you're doing that, I therefore invested thousands of pounds and dollars in a mail order system that analysed the data, so that when somebody rang up, we found out where they saw the advert, and then it was categorized. So I knew that the Daily Express one was the first advert in the Daily Express, and then went on from there. So everything was coded, so I could analyze each week where the money was being made. But I ran more than 800 adverts in the national press. But I knew to the penny or the cent how much profit each one of those adverts made. Now, I had a business consultant came to see me, and he saw my spreadsheet, and he said, you're insane. Why would you do all that work? And I thought, well, because it works. And I was running a multiple $million business on a spreadsheet, and it was one spreadsheet. But I knew where the money was because, I'd put an advert in the Daily Express, a national press, and I'd get, let's say 30 inquiries, but I'd make no money from that. So do I put an advert in the next week? So I've made zero money. All I've got is 30 names. Well, I knew that if I had 30 names, I could see from previous adverts that ultimately within a month or two, that would turn into a profit. So I could extrapolate forward and make a decision. Does that make sense? So even though the advert effectively was a loss, I could still rebook it. And so that's where I went from spending $100 for an advert all the way up to $8,000 for an advert in, say, Men's Health magazine or Cosmopolitan or a Sunday newspaper, stuff like that.
Why do you think? Why do you think entrepreneurs are scared of advertising? So one of the things that I usually say is like most entrepreneurs don't scale their business because they are slightly incompetent in sales and marketing, or they don't have the gusto to go out and actually invest in themselves and marketing. And that's really a really big differentiator. As an expert as well, like you could have a book, you could have this great product, but if you don't know how to get it out there, ultimately you won't make the kind of money that you could.
No, I mean, it was interesting. I have a client called Sarah Starr, very, very smart woman. And what she had done is she'd built up to about $500,000 of revenue purely online. And she said to me, maybe we should go direct mail. And I agreed because I've done so much. I used to mail up to 1 million letters a year around the UK, which is small fry for some businesses, but big for others. So she had a list of people who had bought products in the UK, but she'd never mailed them through the post. But to actually do that, and I wrote the sales letter for her, which is an 8-page full-color sales letter. But what we had to do, and where it's different, is because people had bought multiple products and we wanted to do two different sales letters, we had to do dedupes. And you can't send people in the mail 2 separate packs. Somebody who receives 2 packs in the post, like you receive 2 letters from an individual, you won't think that's very professional. So you've really got to make sure that you are much more efficient in the way you're doing things. And also it's going to cost you money. So you want to make sure that if you're going to send a letter in the post, that whoever's going to get it, they're only going to get 1 letter. And equally, you don't have Mr. Erlend Bakke. And Infusionsoft, for example, Infusionsoft was built from a series of modules. It's kludged together products. And anybody who knows Infusion, who knows the history of it, the way it was thrown together, it's somehow muddled its way to where it is. And it doesn't mesh brilliantly even now.
Supposedly, it's the nickname is Confusionsoft.
Yes.
And when I said that to one of the sales representatives, she kind of laughed and said it's much better now. But we actually don't use Infusionsoft ourselves. So
no, I have some really heavy users of it, and they say, yeah, a new module is released or another alteration is made, and it damages and breaks other modules because everything is so complicated, and the programmers don't realize all the other consequences of making a change.
But they probably should just start from scratch.
Well, there's many ways to do that, but it's probably too late now. But what happens is, because Infusionsoft was designed for the American market, they never really got it right. I mean, I got Infusionsoft years ago when they were just launched into the UK market, and they very much muddled their way through it. And when you actually look at the physical data on the spreadsheets from Infusionsoft, it's a bit of a mess. So as I say, you end up with Mr. Erlend Bakke, because the way that people enter the data and so people don't have clean data. And the way that the postcode system is encoded in the UK, you need uppercase characters for the postcode. So for me, it's GU227UJ. So you need uppercase and you need a space between the first 3 characters and the second 3 characters. Well, Infusionsoft messes all that up and it makes it all lowercase. Literally every single one pretty much was lowercase and there were no spaces. So, and this is, you don't notice this if you're just doing an email business. And so what we needed to do was tidy up the data. And that was a lot of work. But once it was tidy, we could go out in the post. And when we went...
The question is, did you outsource it?
Well, you can't... Well, you can outsource once you have the system that works. But what we did was when we were actually looking at the data, we realized how messy it was. And we had to be very creative in the way to fix it without causing us a massive amount of work. Anyway, the bottom line is ultimately we got the data cleaned. We sent out about 1,000 packs. and we got 100 people into a seminar room, and as a consequence we made £150,000 in net profit through that
Wow.
promotion. And what we know is the bulk of the people who came, the vast majority from some of the data we did, it was through the direct mail. And the reason that direct mail is so powerful is that if you get it in the mail, you're only getting 1, 2, or 3 pieces of mail that day. And it could be a pretty envelope, and people will sit down with a cup of tea, open the envelope, say, I'll just start reading. And once they start reading, if the message is engrossing, they will carry on until the end. And then if they will think about it, but they will put it down their table, and then they're still reminded, so their mind is triggered to remember this sales letter, to act upon it. And because you get that reinforcement, you're getting more of a decision, an active decision. Whereas emails don't have that.
So what you're saying, yeah, because I mean, we don't really get much mail, and because I want everything just digital. Like if it's a bill, just direct debit or whatever. It's interesting how these areas like TV advertising is now cheaper than it used to be because more people are watching Netflix. Direct mail is possibly cheaper than it used to be because less people are buying it because everybody's hearing. Like you got to do it online. It's all digital now. And would you say that the leads are stronger from direct mail because they've actually sat and like looked and read and then had to go online and then register? So are they more likely to buy?
Well, what I can say, at the end of the day, it's bangs per buck. In other words, I'm going to invest today a particular amount of time to grow my business. What is the smartest thing to do? Or I'm going to spend some money promoting my business. And if I'm going to invest $500, $1,000, $2,000, what's the smartest way of spending my money? Now, if one of the options is direct mail, that will give you a very high return on investment. And a lot of the online marketers in the States, it's their secret weapon is direct mail. Now, this call and this time is, if anybody's listening in thinking, well, I'm not really interested in direct mail, that's not the point. The point is, what is the smartest way for you to grow your business? Now, that requires thinking. And the mind is generally designed to work on automatic. So one of the reasons why people don't do direct mail and general good promotions is they'd rather just bang an email out and make $100, $200, $1,000. Whereas if you want to sit down and plan things out more and really think it through and do a test direct mail, you could make tens or hundreds of thousands.
Which kind of brings us back to the sort of numbers game that you were talking about earlier. I mean, I use a lot of numbers to manage what we do. Weekly reports, monthly reports. However, I have found in the past that it's very sort of a part of me goes, ignorance is bliss. We'll just make some more sales. It's kind of difficult to sit down and stare your business in the face and go like, okay, my passion project is a big loss project. I probably should kill it. This thing is what works. This is what people want. That's a really, really difficult thing to do. And how do you do that?
Well, firstly, there is a reason. So it could be like, for example, I remember many, many years ago I really noticed, I remember doing a promotion and making a high 6-figure profit from a direct mail piece. And what I noticed was for the next several months, I coasted. And it's like, I can't believe I did that. But I know other people do the same thing. But then my wife and I were looking at moving house, and we were having our second child, and we were moving to something far bigger, and I knew we were going to decimate the house and put in expensive bathrooms and stuff, all this kind of stuff. And it was a bit of a stretch to go to that next level. But what that did was it got me very focused. And so I then said, right, if we're going to do that, this is how much money it's going to need. So I need to create a promotion which generates a particular amount of money. And so I did that. So you've got to have your why, you know. And, you know, and the thing that keeps, so there's that, but then the other thing is the why in terms of making an impact. And for me, you know, one thing I haven't shared is I created my first information product, and it was this idea that I felt I wanted to create my own legacy because I was selling other people's products, and but I was looking at them and I disagreed with a couple of things that were on one or two CD sets I got hold of, and I felt that there was a missing link. So I decided to craft my own 7-step model to create success in life. And I took each of the 7 principles and I thought, well, okay, well, I'll do several CDs with each an hour just talking about a success principle. So that was the model. And I produced a set of CDs and I launched it. But the way I did it was I followed a systematic process. I said, how do you create a product? Do you design the product or do you write the sales letter first? Well, what I did was I wrote the sales letter first, which is unusual. So the energy goes into the sales letter. So I wrote I think it was an 8 to 12 page sales letter. And I said, there's a 7-word sentence which will transform any damaged marriage. Kind of thing. You know, the 3 reasons why staring in the mirror and saying affirmations won't actually bring you the results you want. But the 5 things you can do that will stratospherically improve the probability that affirmations will actually have an impact on your life. That kind of thing.
I've got one question. Did you write a sales letter and then market the product and then sell the product and then produce it? Or?
No. Good question. That's that's dry testing. Actually, that's illegal. Just so people know, that's illegal in some parts of Europe.
Okay. Is it illegal in the UK?
No, it's not. No.
In the US?
I don't think it is. No. But so yes, that I think the overachiever. Ed Dale was. If anybody comes and knows Ed Dale, that was an old principle in online marketing. Was you'd do some Google AdWord ads. You drive people to a page, and if they were interested, you'd say, "I haven't quite finished the product yet, but if you ask these couple of questions, give me a couple of questions, I'll make sure those are integrated into the product." And then you'd do a full launch afterwards once you knew it worked. No, but I did the sales letter, but also then I started, all right, so now I've got an idea of the sales letter. I then started to pull together my notes for a product. And then from there, I went back to the sales letter. And then what I did was I then sent the sales letter out. And I had no idea what it was going to create, but I knew it was good. I knew it was the best that I could make it. Does that make sense? Because I wasn't needy. It didn't have to get the thing out. I wanted to send it out when I was happy with and I was proud of what I did. Yeah? So when I sent that out, the consequence was that did $3 million in sales over time.
Wow.
$1 million in profit. And I didn't know it was going to do that, Erlend. I really didn't. And I didn't actually even know, this is the crazy thing, years later I didn't know it did 3 million until, I thought it did like 1 million until I actually sat down. This is where the mind lies. And I worked it out and I put together the spreadsheets and I couldn't believe it was 3,121,000. And so I was like, what? I had no idea, And so what I am is I'm very much a numbers guy, and it always surprises me. I mean a silly example. I was talking to a woman recently, and then she said, that she'd been to 18 countries, and it's like, wow, I've never been to 18 countries. That is amazing. So I was like, oh, well, where have you been and where have you been? Anyway, and I've been to several countries, but not that many. So I thought, one day I know, I'll get a list on Wikipedia of all the countries in the world. And I'll tick off which ones I've visited. And I visited 21 or whatever. And I was blown away. I thought, that's it. The mind cannot cope with with too much information. We can only handle 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information, or 5 plus or minus 2, or 3 in some ways. The only way you can be sure is to log things and know that the mind is going to trip you up from time to time. So, I then sat down and did a calibration on another product, and it turned out I'd done $4 million in that, and then another product done $2 million. And I had no idea until I actually sat down and worked it out. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting on a pot of gold here. This is persuasive stuff for anybody who wants to work with me, but equally, what I teach my clients is, if I can make those dumb mistakes, and I've got no idea which countries I've been to. You have within yourself bits of information and bits of numbers which would make people say, wow, I never knew that. Now, a good example, I've written a diary. I sit down and I type up a diary. So years and years ago, I used to tap into a Palm Pilot. I don't know if, do you ever remember the Palm Pilots?
Yeah.
There you go, right? It's not too long ago. So I was tapping with it, sitting in bed with my wife. God knows how she puts up with me. But tap, 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 tap. And then I'd use my, when it moves to, you could actually use, you actually scratch the characters onto the screen with graffiti. That's with the Palm Pilot as well. So I used to do that. And then I moved on from there. So I have on my computer some doc files with what I did each day. And of course, having children, there's all the funny things they said as a kid. So, and people don't think to count up. Well, I decided to count up how many words. There's 1 million words. That's like, I would never have thought I'd typed 1 million words up a diary. But it's a number, it's a metric. It sounds impressive to some people. But it makes me think, wow, it's amazing what you can achieve. Tiny things done each day compound up into something extraordinary. And this business is a compounding business. We're in a world which is very much what I call hare mode versus tortoise mode. People surge to do work and then lie down and fall asleep. Surge and fall asleep. But so what you end up with consultants, and I work with a lot of consultants who want to make more money. So my job, my business now, is I help other people make a lot more money who are coaches, consultants, who have online products, or who are charging people by the hour, or work running seminars. So I fill a seminar room or whatever. And what I find is they're feast and famine people, many of them. They're earning $50,000 a year, $70,000, $100,000, but they're not earning, hundreds, which they could do. And what you need to do is go back to core principles, work out where the big leverage point is, and work consistently. And if you can do that, you will do far better than the surge and then fall asleep, because you build momentum.
So there's one guy that I know teaches this kind of stuff. That's Keith Cunningham. He's got a course called 4-Day MBA. I'm not sure he teaches it anymore. But that was a very, very powerful course for me to attend. And I think it's probably the only time I really had to sit down and look at a balance sheet and kind of understand and look at it. And because, I've just actually went through our accounting yesterday and today for my businesses, and rarely do we ask these like really powerful questions. And the accountant just kind of log it. And a lot of accountants, they pretend to sort of be sort of consultants and want to sell you that service. But typically, as you said earlier, they're not really able to extract. They don't see the numbers that we want to see, because we want to say, okay, if we cut costs here, we can increase profit there, we can reinvest it here, and that'll make us more millions a year, right? That's the information we really want, but a lot of accountants don't do that, especially like small business accountants. How do you recommend to learn this really, really important skill set? Like, what would you say would be a great starting point?
Well, I think you need to make business fun. So I think you come back to core principles, which is what really do I really want to do? What will really float my boat? Which area of my business do I really enjoy spending time on? And is there a way of making the most money from that? Can I wring every bit, wring as in squeeze out every juice of profit from that area by doing something that gives massive value to people, solving their desperate problems? With as I say, with a sufficient margin, I can make a really good living. And you do that by fiddling with numbers in a spreadsheet. And, it's very easy to select a couple of columns and produce a pie chart or a bar chart. But the only way you go, wow, is if you put numbers in and then say, well, if I just make an extra 5% margin here, it doubles my profit. And you just think the numbers, that can't be right. But when you fiddle around, you suddenly get this euphoric high where you say, if I just can do this little bit, that's going to make me another $20,000. That's really exciting. I mean, a good example. Let's imagine you're selling a product which is $200 and you do a deluxe version, which is another $100. So you've gone from a $200 product to a possible $300 product. Well, the consequence of that isn't you make 50% more money. When you actually run the numbers, it actually means that your profit can be double or triple, because depending on various cost factors along the way. But you don't realize that until you actually put the numbers in the spreadsheet and say, well, if I do this and this and this. Because when I did the effort-free life system, what I did was, which is the first product I launched, which was my own product, I knew to do a standard version, a deluxe, and a super deluxe, what I call standard, silver, and gold. The standard version was like $300. The gold silver version was £500, which is $700, $800. Then I did a $1,500 gold version. And so when I was doing my spreadsheet, I was saying, well, what I was looking for was 50% of people to get the silver or gold. So I was looking for like 20% maybe going for silver and 30% gold. Yeah. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, what can I do in the sales letter to increase the probability that people go silver or gold? I was thinking it through, and what could I put in when people bought the 1,500 that I could afford to add to the product that would have value, that wouldn't impact my profit massively. So I could actually put extra things in the box with the product. And it was all work from that point of view, and all looking at giving the maximum value and thinking, what could I do to increase that chance of that happening? And I could do a test. Now, most people who do email wouldn't do a test, a split test. They'd never think, if they had a 2,000 list, to do 1,000 emails with one message and 1,000 emails with other. It takes more work. You've got to have different landing pages in some respects. So you've got to have a plugin that's going to handle that. You've got to analyze the figures. But that's really how you grow a business. Because if you test and make changes, you can go from a loss-making a promotion to a very profitable promotion. But it's whether you're prepared to put the work in. But what you need to understand is that the brain has been developed over millions of years. You have the core reptilian brain, you have the mammalian brain, the mammal brain, and then you have the cortex, which is this thin layer. It's like a thick handkerchief that's laid over the top of mammalian brain. Now, the bit at the front of the brain, which makes decisions about where do I want my business to be in 6 months? What's the smartest thing to do? That's made at the front part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. I don't want anybody to burn out here and go, but it's very simple. It's the prefrontal cortex. Now, here's the thing. The prefrontal cortex tires easily, and you can only do that kind of goal-setting thinking for about an hour to 2 hours a day, and then it's done. So that's why people go home at night to their partners after a long day at the office, and when their partner says, do you want carrots with your dinner or do you want peas? All you can say is, whatever. you know. Do you want to watch this movie tonight or do you want to watch that movie tonight? You decide. That's what we do because our decision-making process is exhausted. So, therefore, it's hard to plan in an evening. So it's hard to say I'm working as a full-time employee and then in the evening I'm going to develop this multi-million turnover business. You want to do it in the morning. So you want to spend the first couple of hours of the day doing that kind of high-level thinking. And also making notes. So I'm a big note taker. So you like to know about software. So I use Evernote to store, which is mostly for stories. So if I'm going out for dinner with somebody, meeting somebody, arranging something with a client, there's always a story with a lesson in it. So every day, without fail, I will log a story in Evernote, which teaches a lesson about perseverance, faulty thinking that I have, where I've like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that, such and such, you know. Bad behavior, bad customer service, delusional thinking by myself. I try and catch myself out, you know, daft things. I mean, even I went to the shops recently and bought some groceries. I literally bought 3 things from a grocer's, came back, put them on, and there was a bag. And it had some vegetables in it. And I looked at the bag and thought, I don't know what that is. What's in that bag? And I thought, that is so exciting. I've just been to the grocer's. I bought 3 things. 2 of them are in a bag and 1 thing isn't. And I could see the rough shape of what those things were, but I didn't know what the vegetable was. Now, people listening might be thinking, well, that's dumb. I would never do that. Ah, well, I wouldn't have thought so either, but I did. So I got out my Evernote, took photographs with my camera and logged that story. Now, why? Because the mind very easily forgets. The mind is designed not to remember, but to forget. So we forget some of the most amazing things that happen to us. We forget the problems we solve. We forget the skills that we have. And the way to make money in this business is to store up those things and say, and understand where your real point of leverage is. Does that make sense? The reason why my book, which is this one here, the Are You Next book, has the stories in it, and it's got page after page of story and stories with clients, is because when a client comes, before they leave, I get them to record a testimonial, and then I had a member of my team, okay, I had a guy working with me, type up the testimonial. We take photographs of them working together. It goes on my blog. And we think of all the things that we actually accomplish with the client, and we create a case study. And then after several months, I decided I could put all that into a book. But every time I get a testimonial from a client, I log it in a testimonial Word file. But the crazy thing is that when I go to that file with a new testimonial, I'll see this testimonial that I typed in the day before, and I have no memory of that. Now, with the only reason I know this is it's just amazing, but I don't worry about it. I know there's nothing faulty with my memory, but we forget the stuff that goes on. And the only way that you can really make money in this business is to realize that all the assets you have and to maximize them. So I build up my stories, realize where I'm helping somebody, and then I can create a product from that because I've got all this collateral.
I like how you have habits and systemization and journaling, the sort of spending time in the morning to really think. It's interesting how it's taken me so many years to really start doing it. And I still struggle with it. I still struggle some mornings with that.
With which bit?
With the thinking. One of the people that there's this guy called Bob Posen who used to be the CEO of Fidelity Investments in the US, and he's on lots of boards. He's a Harvard professor. He's an incredibly impressive individual. I asked him, what is your secret to success? And he said, well, I sit down for 15 minutes a day in the morning and I just think about the smart things I'm going to do today. And then, guess what? Then I do them. And I said, that's it? He's like, yeah, that's it. I was like, wow, that's insane. But so where do you think this need to do comes from? So being busy rather than productive. Where does that come from?
Well, we're not designed as human beings for this society. Really, we haven't changed much in 60,000 years. I mean, Homo sapiens sapiens appeared round about 100 to 60,000 years ago. We're designed to be living on the savannah. We're designed to be an environment where we can literally pluck food off the vine, as it were, and kill an animal,
I plucked the store downstairs in the store here, just downstairs. Yeah.
We're in it. We're also, there's an addiction to surprise and the next, like, ooh, wow. So we're very distracted by an email with an enticing headline. Thinking is hard. And some of the clients I have come to me and they say, Chris, should I do A or B? And it's very hard to think sometimes. So they come very clouded and they need somebody to bounce their ideas off. So some of the stuff that I help clients with is very simple stuff. But what they know is that I know my onions. I've been around the block. I mean, I'm 55. I've had all kinds of success and all kinds of failures. I have an intuitive sense of what's going to work based on, things like, the Gladwell stuff, thin slicing stuff. I've just seen so much that I can tell quickly what's working and what won't. And so they need that. And we are very distracted. And this guy is very wise. But the most likely thing, if you take the audience who is listening to this or watching this video, the vast majority, even though they hear that simple tip to spend 15 minutes, the vast majority won't do that. Because it's hard. Thinking is just so hard. So what we need support mechanisms. We need to trick our mind. I mean, when I was writing a sales letter, I remember going back to Sarah's start. She effectively was paying me to write a sales letter. Well, I've written sales letters for years. And I adore sitting down and writing long-form sales letters. And I had to sit down and start from scratch. I had no idea. I really, really, really did not want to do that. Well, that's ridiculous. I love writing copy. I get a very high writing. I get into the flow. But getting started is hard because I'm faced with a blank sheet of paper. But what was fantastic was I had a deadline. We had a deadline. This seminar had to be on a particular date. We were already behind schedule because she tried another copywriter. It was not a good sales letter. And she knew it. She said, Chris, I need this sales letter. Please, will you help me write it? I'll write it for me. So I did. But I didn't want to do it. But once I got started, I got into the flow. And then when I got the first bit of the sales letter, it was starting to form. And then I'd sleep and then wake up the next morning. And then there was resistance to going back. I thought, well, do you know what? I'll just make a couple of changes and then I'll take a break. And suddenly I'm spending 3 hours tweaking the letter and making it better and better and better. So I have to trick myself to get working sometimes.
I think, I'm not sure if this is like a quote or something. I probably heard it from somebody else. But make it easy for yourself to succeed. So if you're going to the gym, get enough time for it. Put your gear out. Pack your bag. You gotta sort of make it easy for yourself to succeed. So like, don't have your phone on. Don't turn off notifications. Put it with the screen down. Even better, put it away. Put it in your drawer. Instead of having 10 things in a day, set just one thing in a day. Like one really smart thing per day. And why do we set these like lofty, crazy goals? Like, oh yes, I'm going to start working out, and I'm going to do it in the morning, and in the afternoon, and I'm going to do it 10 days a week. Why do we do that?
Right. Well, there's. I don't know if you know the concept of now me and future me. So now
No.
me, right now, is me. There's now me. And I think, right, tomorrow I'm going to do X. And I'm very excited. I know I'm going to be working on my new book tomorrow. And I know I'm very excited about it. And I'm so excited. I know that when I get at my desk at 9 o'clock, that's the only thing I'm going to do. That's now me. Well, now me isn't going to do that. That's future me is going to do it. Now, future me, which is the new now me tomorrow morning, gets up and before 9 o'clock, I don't need to do that now. I'm going to do a bit more research. I won't actually do the writing. You see? Now, you have to know that. So you have to know that future me isn't now me. It's got its own. So you have to understand the concept that consciousness shifts. The essence of who I am, me, is not the same me as yesterday. So this is a shifting consciousness, because in different environments, like if I'm around my family with certain family members, I'm much quieter than I am now and less enthusiastic. You know, I might be slightly grumpier or something. And it's because personality is context related. We say that person is selfish. That person is very organized. That person is very meticulous. In the Eastern cultures, they don't say that. They say, in this context, he's inconsiderate. In this context, he's very organized. So in the Western world, we see personality as fixed. In the East, they see personality as context related.
Right.
So I have to set my environment in such a way that it works for me. Now, a good example is I used to have an agreement to read 20 minutes a day. So a book, I'd read a book for 20 minutes a day. Very hard. Why? When you're conceiving children, and
It's difficult to read a book while conceiving children.
while conceiving,
that would be hard.
Very hard, but it's also quite hard afterwards, especially for blokes. And I don't know how, but blokes it's hard. You know, all I want to do is sleep. I won't go into too much detail, but or if I've been out for the night and I've been drinking, you know, and I've had a bit of alcohol or something, or it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I do not want to do 20 minutes reading. I just don't. So I break my streak. And once I break my streak, I give up. So what I did was I changed the agreement to 10 minutes of reading, minimum.
Okay.
10 minutes is massively different from 20. I can always do 10 minutes of reading. Does that make sense? But when I sit and read for 10 minutes, I don't read for 10 minutes. Rarely do I read for 10 minutes. I read for 20. So we have to set minimum goals. So when I write my diary at night, I have been writing my diary daily pretty much for nearly 18, 20 years. Now you'd think, and I can tell you that the benefits of doing the diary has been massive. Good, there you go. But do I want to do it? No. I'm grumpy at times. I get into bed and go, oh, I just honestly couldn't be bothered. But I do it because I want to be able to report to you and to other people, because I have my level of pride that I have had a streak of so many days.
I've got 4 years now.
Of diary every day?
Yeah.
Wow, well done you.
I've gone through phases. I used to do Evernote, and then I went back to like just having a notebook. I find writing it, because I need to slow down, so I write really slowly when I do it. And then I've changed it from evening to morning. I find morning better. So to start my thinking process in my cerebral cortex. which I'm showing more and more of. I do. I'm looking more and more like that guy in X-Men. You know, the
Patrick,
Xavier.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
need a wheelchair with the X wheels. That would be pretty cool, actually. So let's go back to how do you work with clients?
In what way? Oh,
So if I was to come to you and say, okay, I'm at a certain place, you know, I've got 115,000 books out there, you know, got an email list, we're making money, but, you know, it's kind of want to launch this hardcore MBA program because I feel there needs to be a preparatory course for entrepreneurs. So before people decide to become an entrepreneur, they start building the sort of skills and habits that successful entrepreneurs have, like meditation, exercise, understanding diet, journaling, all these things, so that when they start a business, they're ultimately more successful because they've already ingrained success habits. And I think people should do that before they start a business, because what typically happens is, like what happened with me was like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, and then I'll go out there and I will work really hard, and then I'll work myself into the ground because I don't have the success habits that I need to have, and then I start my personal growth journey. But then I'm running a business and doing personal growth, which is really, really hard. So I suggest personal growth, and then get those habits in line, and then start a business, because then you're resilient and you have the mental, physical, and spiritual elements aligned to become successful. So I want to launch that product. How can you help me do that?
well, the way I work with clients is anybody who wants to come and work with me, I say, right. Many clients will come for a full day or a multiple days. So I have a big penthouse apartment here just outside London, and people come and stay, and we work directly on the business. And if necessary, we'll rewrite copy on websites, set up squeeze pages, create an email campaign, build a business model in a spreadsheet or whatever. But what I get them to do is I find out where their real pain is. And I say, before you come, I want you to write your testimonial for when you leave. So you'd sit down and say, hi, my name's Erlend Bakke. I came to see Chris in a particular date, and I'm sitting here writing it, having spent 2 full days with him. And this is what has transformed. We did this, we rewrote this, we created a whole new campaign. I'm absolutely certain that I'm going to generate another 100,000 from this. Chris gave me 3 joint venture partners, and Chris came up with 4 new product ideas I'd never considered. He honed down my product ideas to one core one that was going to be the main focus for the next year. Blah, 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 blah. Full detail. Now I'm looking for 300 to 400 to 500 words. Yeah? So that's your testimonial for the end of the time we're together. So I'm clear what your outcome is. Not my agenda, your agenda. And then I will encourage them to do one 3 months later. So in other words, like if it was you and me now, we're going forward 3 months and saying, okay, so this would be now in 2016. We're recording to. So you're now saying this is X month in 2016. It's now 3 months since I've worked with Chris. This has what's changed. And what was amazing about Chris was he gave me such and such and such and such, which enabled me to get where I am now. And then there'd be another one, which might be 200 words for 12 months' time. Now, with that, I can look at that before you come and say, great, I know where you're heading, but can you give me more detail here? And actually, I'm not sure I can help you with that and that, because we can't really do that in that amount of time. We can give you the essence of it, but I can't finish an 8-page sales letter at the end of 2 days. It's too much. So we have to have really, reasonable expectations. But then you come along, and so we make that come true. Because I know that before you leave here, I will get a video testimony, and I want you to be raving about our time together. So it's important to address your agenda. Now, I think that's what good consultants do. They find out the need of the client, and then they fulfill on that, so that I over-deliver on that. And that's why I have amazing testimonials. And
So So you really understand the pains of the person coming, what they really want, and you get them to write it down, to get them to think, and then you spend a whole day with them. You get a lot of clear points done, and then you have a follow-up session later.
Yeah, I'll have follow-up, and people will come again, and generally they will try something, it works, so they come again, so they make more money and they invest back in again. But I mean, obviously some people, I've got clients in Australia and I've had them in different countries of the world, and so they can't come here, but we work on Skype. But the process is still the same, which is I call it a future testimonial. And then we make their testimonial come true. It's as simple as that. And so a lot of my business is mostly referral, because people say, you've got to work with Chris, I see where you are. And the other thing is that people come to me in Payne, and I have a number of clients who come and they will cry, because that's when you get help. And so I have to have a lot of compassion for people, because they're coming when they're really struggling. And there's nothing more painful than spending months of work on a set of videos, launching it to your 1,000 list and getting one sale. It's like, ouch. Or ready to quit the business because you realize that what you do is really great and you're not getting the revenue that you're looking for. It's very painful for some people. And I have that responsibility to really support them in the best way I can. I mean,
so Chris, we're doing a webinar next week. If you're watching this on the YouTube or listening to our podcast, you do need to sign up on my email list to get access to these webinars. You need to go to youwillneverworkagain.com and just sign up there, and you will be able to join our webinar. But if you like this podcast as well, Chris, so where can we get more information about you? Is it ChristopherJohnPayne.com?
It is.
That you recommend?
And I've created a special page for viewers of this video and listening to the audio, and it's at ChristopherJohnPayne, Payne.com/hardcore, HARDCORE. And the reason it's hardcore is because this is Hardcore MBA, Erlend Bakke's podcast. Now, on that page, there's a number of products. Some of them are paid for products, which you can have for free. This is just for listening to this program as a gift to Erlend. And also, I have a book called Wise Up, which this is the proof copy. And this is full of fables. These are fables, thousands of years old stories with cartoons in it. So, for example, there's the Aesop's fable story of the tortoise and the hare, with insights how you can implement those stories in your life. Well, 3 of those stories on video are part of a gift to you, just as, so you can implement some of the wisdom of the ages. And if you want to get hold of my book, I'll have a link on the page, which is if you want to get a copy of this. And as you know, it's full color throughout. So, and that's just full of case studies of literally you can see what an original sales letter looked like and what it looked like after I worked on it and stuff like that. You're very welcome. If I can help you and you want a free half-hour Skype session, I love doing Skype sessions like this and helping people the best way I can.
So guys, you heard it here, ChristopherJohnPayne.com/hardcore, and you can get some really good, perfect videos that will really excel your info business. Chris, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, and it's a pleasure knowing you, and we've got to know each other over the last few months, and it's delightful knowing you. I just love you and Christina. Wonderful people.
Right back at you, my man. Right back at you. So guys, if you enjoyed this episode and you want us to produce a lot more of them, please go to iTunes and give us a short, honest review of the podcast, and that actually makes us reach a larger audience, add more value, and keep on going, producing videos like this. So thank you, and signing out here from London. You're signing out from Woking?
Woking, just outside London, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, that's my V and W. My V and W. I can't distinguish between them. So if you ever think you're hearing a Norwegian, listen to their V's and W's, because we really struggle with them. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye-bye now.
This podcast is brought to you by MrOutsource.com. Outsourcing to the Philippines done for you. Mr. Outsource is a recruitment company matching busy entrepreneurs with Filipino virtual assistants, so you can have the time to focus on what's important.